Hey everybody, Aaron Blaise here, and I've got a brand new set of custom Photoshop water brushes that I've just created, and I want to share them with you today. I thought I'd sit down and kind of take you through brush by brush, kind of what they're able to do. As you know, painting water can be difficult when you're painting it from scratch, and so being from Florida, living on the water, I'm always looking at it, trying to figure out, are there some easier ways that I can create brushes, that sort of thing, in order to speed up the process. You might be wanting to do a concept piece or something like that, and you want to paint some water in there, and you want to get through it quickly. So I've spent the last several weeks kind of developing some new water brushes, and there's 24 in this set that I've created, and why don't we just kind of dive in, and I'll start taking you through. So up here, once again, if you've seen my tutorials before, you know that I have a bunch of brushes. But right here, up at the top, these top two rows, these are all my new water brushes that I've created. And it goes all the way from different types of ripples and water shapes and that sort of thing, all the way to, the sparkles that you might see on the water. And a couple of brushes that will actually give you some spray if you're doing a breaking wave and that sort of thing. But let's just go ahead and start with the very first brush. Here's the shape right here, and what I like to do is I like to start kind of with a light to mid-tone. I'm going to make this one kind of cool, and I'm just going to go ahead and start painting over the top. I'm going to create a layer on top over here on the right. You can see I've created a new layer. It says layer 7, and I'm going to lighten up the value. I'm going to warm it up and lighten it up. And what I want to do is I'm going to use this brush, this first brush, I'm going to use it to kind of lay down kind of a like a textured base to work on. So I'm just going to lightly brush over the top, and you can see what I did there? I'm going to actually change that size to 1200 pixels and just create a nice base. There we go. Already that looks kind of cool, right? So that's something we can start to work on right over the top. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the next brush. This next one right here is kind of interesting. It'll give me some of my dark shapes, so I'm going to go the opposite way. Water reflects the sky, and the sky is all different values, and so depending on which way the plane of a ripple or a wave is, will give you your dark or light value depending on which part of the sky it's reflecting. So this part that we just laid down, that's reflecting the lighter part of the sky. So let's get a nice cool blue. Let's go kind of dark with it, and this is going to reflect the darker part of the sky. And once again, I'm just going to lightly just start to brush in. See how cool that is? I'm just going to brush in where I feel kind of where the waves might be. And the key to these brushes, I want to emphasize, the key to these brushes is experimentation. One of the cool things about these is that you can combine them and get different effects and shapes and that sort of thing. So here I am, I'm just kind of following the contours of the waves that I think might be in there. And what's also really neat about these brushes is that they follow the direction of the brush stroke. I'm going to shrink that down a little bit and get some smaller shapes back there. And already you can start to feel kind of some of the waves that we have in here. So let's go ahead and lock that. So I like what we've got. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up one more time. And let's get some bigger shapes in the foreground. And see what happens where they kind of build up on top of each other? I've got my opacity set at 80%, and I can get lighter and darker, and depending on where they kind of go over each other. And I've got my brush mode set on multiply, by the way. There. I kind of like that. There. So what's happening is, because I have it set on multiplying, it's multiplying with the layer, with the brush stroke underneath. And that gives it a nice feel. I'm going to go just a little smaller one more time and just hit some of those, the far side of the wave there. So you can start to feel that ripple effect of the wave. So I'm going to go ahead and lock this layer over on the right. I'm going to go ahead and lock that in place. And let's try some experimentation. Let's go, instead of multiply, let's try overlay. And I'm going to go with a lighter value. Okay. And let's try a different texture. I've got some interesting textures over here that create kind of finer ripples. And I'm just going to experiment. I'm going to double up that layer. There we go. And I'm just going to brush over it and just see what we get. Bring that all the way up. Get a nice light value. And you can see it starts to give it a kind of an interesting texture. And once again, remember, I'm only painting because I've got that layer locked. I'm only painting where I've painted the waves, because the wave texture is separate from that value that I've got underneath. So you can see it's really only painting where I've got that. And if I go ahead and set this back to multiply again, I'm going to go a little darker. You can start to see some interesting texture. If I blow this up, see that texture underneath I'm building up? Isn't that cool? It's really cool. And so it'll give you, water has all these varying shapes and ripples and all kinds of fun stuff. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm just laying in some different textures. I'm going to go ahead and combine these layers right here. I've got those there. I'm going to go to Layer, Merge Layers, and you can see I've combined them now. And so now, if I want to paint over the top, watch what happens. Now I'm getting texture over everything because I've combined that background with the ripple layer, and I'm creating all these really great rippled textures on the water. So let's go ahead and let's just try experimenting again. Here I've got some like little ripple brushes. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to keep them at that size actually. I'm going to knock the size down, or the percentage down, the opacity, and I'm going to set it to color dodge. And I'm going to really brighten it up just as an experiment. And let's hit some of the lighter sides of these waves. Look at that. I'm creating some fun, very cool textures and creating form. There we go. I'm going to increase that size. Go even bigger. Look at that. We're creating some kind of highlights on the water on the far side of these waves. See how quickly we're doing this? It goes very quickly. It's kind of fun. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to grab the regular airbrush that comes with your standard set of brushes from Photoshop. I'm just going to grab that airbrush. I'm going to set this to multiply up here. I'm going to grab kind of a cooler mid-tone and knock that percentage up a little bit on the opacity. And I just want to darken in, let's just darken some of these waves here. There we go. Just to give it a little bit more shape, a little bit more varying value. I'm going to push my pressure sensitivity for the shape so I can get a little bit more detailed. I'm going to go a little bit more pure with the color. And look, we're getting these really cool shapes. Look at that. Look how quickly we've done this. It's really kind of fun. It's very, very simple. I'm going to hit some nice darks here. Some nice darks there. There. Now we're out on the ocean. We've got waves coming in. Look how neat that is. All because we got these textures that are carrying it over. Let's experiment a little bit more. I'm going to grab some other shapes. Let's try some of these. Let's see what we get. I'm going to go normal. There we go. That's more for I think that's more for calmer water. Let's get something that's a little choppier. Try something a little choppier here. Let's try this here. I'm gonna go a little darker. There we go. And once again, just playing with some shapes, getting more texture in there. Let's go ahead and combine. We're going to merge those layers. I'm going to go ahead and hit multiply. So I want to hit some nice dark texture in here. Make that a little bigger. There, see that? Look at that texture I just laid in. That really feels like we got a little bit of wind blowing. There's a little bit of, it just adds some interest to the texture in that. Whoop, I got way too big there. There we go. And so now, because I'm using multiple brushes, it doesn't feel repetitive. You know, it feels very, very organic. Now, one of the cool things we can do is I'm going to go ahead. Let's see here. Let me see what this shape will do. I love experimenting just to see what we can do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this once again to color dodge. Let's go really bright with it. And I'm going to knock that opacity down. And I'm just experimenting. I have no idea what's going to happen. But I want to pretend like there's sunlight. If you've seen any of these images I've done, you'll see that I like to do reflected, like sunlight bouncing off the water. So I'm doing that now as if like a little section of the water here, using this other brush that I've got. It's all about textures, nice convincing water textures. And so I'm color dodging, I'm burning in some of these shapes in here. See how neat that is? I'm being sure to hit really just the edge of the side of the wave that would catch light. This back side wouldn't really catch any light. The darker areas. I'll put a little couple in there, couple in there. And so now that I've got a nice water base, I'm going to create a layer on top. I've got a nice water base. I'm going to grab a nice bright color, almost white. I'm just going to grab my regular brush that you get with Photoshop, standard brush, kind of small. I'm going to knock the opacity up a little bit. Keep that the tip pressure sensitivity on. And I'm going to pretend that this section in here, right kind of over to the just slightly left, is catching some light. I'm going to brighten that up even more. Knock up that opacity. And now what I can do is I can very quickly come through. Let's knock that size down a little bit. There we go. I can very quickly come through and just have some of these top edges of these ripples catch light. And so I'm imagining the sun kind of reflecting off some of these smaller shapes. And it just takes a little bit of time, but you know, like I said, because we've got this base in here that we just created in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, we created a nice base that we can then start creating some of our reflected light. So you'll see that I'm going to push that back. Even some of the bottoms of some of these waves on the back side will still catch a little bit of light. Some of them don't, some of them do. And the key to all of this is to stay spontaneous. You want to be really spontaneous, but controlled with what it is that you're laying in. You know, you think about the form, the shape that the water is taking, and think about how the light is going to play off of that form. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm thinking, okay, the back sides of these ripples that are catching light, they're going to reflect. They're going to be nice and bright. And I'm just going to keep hitting that. And that's good enough for now. Otherwise, it's going to take a while to get through there. Now the next thing I've got, watch these. These are really cool. I've got some brushes here, these little sparkle brushes. Now I'm going to go ahead and knock the opacity way up and turn that off. And watch this. Whoops, turn that back on. Look at, I got sparkles. I'm just lightly hitting it where I think the sunlight might hit. Oops. Let's push those back a little bit. Maybe not so many there. Maybe a couple, maybe a little bit up on top there. There might even be a couple out on the outer edge. And definitely some right here. And look, we're already getting sparkling water. All very, very quickly, done very simply. I'm going to get rid of some of these too. They bother me. There we go. By working on layers, you can always go back and erase. I always work on multiple layers. And even, you know, right here, there's a kind of a change in the plane. I'm going to knock the size down, and maybe some of that is catching, and maybe that, and maybe over here. And just out to the edges, they're catching, it's catching a little bit of light. See how neat that is? Cool. And let's combine them. I'm going to combine those. Actually, no, I'm going to go ahead and combine them. I'm going to merge those layers. And once again, I'm going to keep it on color dodge. I'm going to grab that standard airbrush that you get with Photoshop. There we go. Make it nice and big. Knock the opacity way down to 7%. Keep that there. I'm going to grab a nice bright yellow, the color of the sun. And watch, I'm just going to really brighten up those areas that are really catching light. See it? Brighten right up. And look at that. And then leave, you know, I'm going to leave kind of those edges. But look what we just did. We created water in about 15 minutes. There you go. So there's one. Let's try some other ones. I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. And let's go ahead and fill it with that right there. Okay, now so let's try a different type of wave. So let's go back to the brushes. I'm going to go ahead and set this to normal. Create a layer on top. Go back to our brushes. And I've got some interesting brushes here that you can create. Whoop, I got to go dark with it. There we go. You can create. Got normal. There we go. Oh, I got it set at 7%. There we go. We're going to bring that up. See the shapes I'm able to lay in here? It kind of varies up in value, but maybe, you know, it's kind of a ripply surface. There we go. And I'm going to create another wave behind that. Maybe there's a series of waves coming in. Let's shrink up the brush a hair. So we're going back in perspective, you know. We got some nice waves coming right in. And the waves are going to get, as they recede into the distance, they're going to get a little smaller. They're going to get a little closer together. Let's shrink that up again. See what we're doing? We're getting some really nice little effects happening here. I'm going to shrink that up one more time, even smaller, so that they go off into the distance. There. Look at that. Now, I'm going to create a layer underneath what we just did. And let's get some light value in there. I'm going to go a little warmer with that color, go a little brighter with it. Let's knock that size back up because we're going to start in the foreground again. And once again, just like we did with that other wave, I'm going to imagine that towards the top here, it's going to catch some light. And because I'm working underneath, it's not going to mess up the dark shapes that we've created. So I'm just going to lightly lay in some of these shapes. There we go. There. And that feels nice. There we go. Go a little smaller. A little smaller. Look how quickly we're doing this. You know, I'm lucky that where I live, from my studio I can see the ocean. And so I'm always looking out there. I'm looking at waves, I'm looking at the shapes, and I'm always trying to figure out how can I create that. And so this is kind of the thinking that I put into these brushes. Let's shrink that up a little bit more. We're going back into the distance. Shrink it up a little more. There we go. Look at that. That feels pretty good. Just creating waves. If I blow this up, see how nice that is? I can come into the foreground and let's go even brighter with it. And some of these, yeah, you know, maybe this is a little brighter because atmospheric perspective, as things recede, the values get closer together. The darks aren't so dark and the lights aren't so light. But as things get closer into the foreground, you get more contrast. And so maybe some of these waves in the foreground have a little more contrast to them. There, look at that. Now, you can see that I'm reflecting, you know, there's some really light color being reflected, and it doesn't quite feel right because of the sky back here. And I don't really know where our horizon is, but let's go ahead and establish one. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a layer underneath, and I'm going to grab that light color because it's reflecting some of that sky color, but I'm going to make it a little, just slightly darker. And let's go ahead and fill that in. And you go, oh no, you ruined it. No, I didn't ruin it. I'm just going to move this up. And now we've got our horizon. Like that. So now that feels a little more natural. We got some of the same color that's up in the sky mixed with the color in the water. And then the other thing we can do is we can go up on top here, and I'm going to grab, push on my bucket and grab my gradient tool. And keep that. I'm going to keep that color. Now watch what I do. I'm just going to do a little gradient from here. I've got it set at 41%. And I want that to recede into the distance. So I'm just, whoops, I've got it. Hold on one second. There we go. There. I've got it on color dodge. I don't want color dodge. I want it on normal. So let's redo that. There, we got that set to normal. Got the right color. There we go. And we're just getting some nice atmosphere going back there. Just something to play with, something, a little idea. Once again, we can go back. Let's go back, create a layer on top, and I'm going to grab some of these brighter colors. And let's grab our paintbrush. And, you know, some of those little ripply shapes that we had, we can just go ahead and lightly lay them in. See that? I'm going to mix those layers together. Merge layers. There we go. There, just adding some texture. There, once again, we got some water there. Pretty cool. Let's try a different one. We've got a lot of different brushes to choose from. They're very, very cool. You can pretty much come up with any combination you want. Let's try some, I'm just going to go ahead and just run through some of these brushes just so you can see kind of what they do. I'm going to grab a darker value. I'm just going to brush it down. Here's something that, you know, to create a nice rippled, kind of a windy surface in the background. That's kind of interesting. Let's grab the next one. Now, once again, this is all about kind of layering, you know, building it up. Here's a nice, you know, maybe it's a light breeze. You know, that's a nice base to lay down. Let's create another layer. Here's something that's a little thicker, you know, and then you can work over the top of that. Got lots of different shapes in here. You know, here's one that's really full, and you can just kind of roughly lay in a base. You can see all the different shapes that I've got in there. You can lay in this base. Look at that. And then work over the top of it. You know, already we've got like this stormy, you know, the stormy sea. Look at that, like so. And then you, just like we did on that first set, you just work over the top of it. I worked on top of our color. Let's fill that in. There we go. And here's some more fun shapes. See that? And you just paint on the texture. You just paint that water texture right onto your canvas. If you want to create waves and then paint the texture onto the waves, you can do that. Let's do that real quick. I'm going to go ahead. What color do we have here? Well, let's go a little cooler, a little darker. There we go. Let's fill that in. I'm going to go a little darker. Let's just grab a standard brush right there. And I'm just going to draw in some wave shapes. Let's just do it down here. Let's bring it up. There we go. You know, when I was a kid, my father was a charter captain, and I worked on the boat a lot. And so I was out on the ocean all the time, the Gulf of Mexico. And we were out in some really rough seas quite a bit. Matter of fact, when I was 14, we were lost out in the ocean for 3 days. And that was quite an adventure. That was a long, long adventure. But here we are, just kind of creating some, as if it were rough seas out, and we're seeing some horizon. I'm just creating the silhouette of what you might see, you know, down between waves. So I'm going to lock that layer. There we go. I'm going to lock that layer, and I'm going to grab a nice light value there. And let's go back to that first brush we started with. Now watch. I can follow some of these wave shapes. There we go. Like so. I'm going to get really light on there. There we go. And there we go. And then I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to go a little darker. Actually, I'm going to go like mid-tone. I'm going to multiply it. Set it on multiply. Still got that layer locked, remember. And I'm going to grab that brush, that second brush that we used before. I'm going to shrink it a little bit. Let's make it, yeah, 982. And let's just go ahead and lay in some of these dark areas again. Maybe in here. Actually go a little smaller with it. That way we can get some of these, the back sides of these waves. Maybe in here. There, look at that. I'm going to go bigger with it. So we got some nice big shapes here. And see how we're creating very quickly kind of a wavy ocean. And I'm going to go a little smaller and just catch the tops of some of these. Let's go back. I'm going to go back a little brighter. Go back to that original. Well, actually, let's keep it where it's at. Keep the same brush. Just go back to normal. And it's hit the tops of some of these. I'll go a little darker. Not too crazy about that, so I'm going to set this back to multiply. See, this is the beauty of it. You can just kind of jump around. Just jump around and experiment. There we go. That feels a little better. And once again, going in and just grabbing different brushes for creating different shapes. Grab that airbrush. Whoops. Oh, too much. Let's drop that down. I have it set on multiply. There we go. There. Now I can be more subtle with it. See there? Get dark over here. That's all going into shadow. Look at the shape we're getting. And it's just really spontaneous. I'm going to go ahead and do overlay and grab those brushes again. Get some decent shapes. I'm going to grab the same shapes actually and just bring that down. Knock that opacity way up. Let's get the color bright. That's an interesting effect. It's interesting. I kind of like it. We'll go big. Let's go big. There. Go back to multiply. See what I'm doing? I'm just kind of jumping around, experimenting. I can always go back in and darken it again, see? So look at that. We just created kind of a cool, interesting waves happening up on top there. Then you can always grab that, let's just grab that standard brush from Photoshop, put the tip pressure sensitivity on. I'm going to set this to normal, and oh, turn that on, there we go. And I can always, come in and define very quickly. I can define my edges. You can see what I'm doing. I'm kind of hitting these edges to get the water to feel like it's not so cut out. It was feeling a little cut out, so I can change that. I brightened up the value. I'm just coming in and hitting some of these edges. Maybe there's a few bubbles, some foam in there. It's getting churned up. There we go. Look how quickly we created that. See there? These water brushes, I'll tell you, they're going to save you so much time. Had a couple spots there. Look at that. Let's try another one. This one's really cool. This will be the last one, and then it really, like I said, it's really all about getting in there and experimenting. Lock those layers, play with it, see what you can come up with. But check this one out. This is very cool. Let's go a little brighter and more pure, just for the heck of it. I'm going to fill that in, and then I'm going to, oops, let me create a layer on top, and then fill that in, and I'm going to drop that layer down about there. There we go. Now let's work on this layer. I'm going to go ahead and lock it, like we've got there, and I'm going to go dark. Now watch, look at these brushes. This is really cool. So let's imagine it's a kind of a nice, calm day, and there we go. I'm going to go kind of big. There we go. Look at these. I'm just going to brush in some nice ripples. Look how quickly I'm laying this in. Go a little smaller. Hold that shift key down. Now if I hold that shift key down, it gives me a straight line across. So in case you didn't know that, it helps. I'm going to build up. Some of those ripples are getting a little too small. There we go. See how neat that is? Look how quickly we laid that in. Very cool. Very, very cool. Let's try something different. I'm going to create a layer on top. I'm going to fill this in first. I'm going to get a nice, more pure color. Fill that in. Create a layer on top. Once again, go dark with it. Maybe a little cooler. Grab those paint brushes that we were just using. And I'm going to keep the two layers separate this time and just see what we get. So I want it to feel like we've got some very smooth kind of rollers coming in. See what I've got there? There. I'm going to go a little smaller. I'm building it up slowly. Some nice rollers coming in. Go a little up, a little too small. Let's set that at 700. There we go. Nice shapes. Holding that shift key down, that gives me a straight line across. See how everything's kind of receding into the background. Receding into the background. There, so I can create a layer on top of this. And I want to go a little, I want to grab that color, go a little brighter with it. Let's fill it in. And once again, I'm going to move it. Let's put it right about there. That feels like where the horizon would be. See how nice that feels? Now I can come back to our ripple layer. I'm going to create a layer underneath our dark layers. And I'm going to go lighter with it now. Actually, let's match that sky color. I just took my ink dropper, grabbed that color from the sky, and I've got our rippled paintbrush. I'm going to start big again. See how big that is? And now that we've got a nice bright color, I'm imagining the back sides of these waves reflecting that sky color. And look at that. See how nice that is? Just lays right in there. Keep that the same. Let's go slightly smaller. Slightly smaller. There we go. Wow, see how simple this is? How quick it is? Go smaller. Still with the brush. Just laying in some shapes. A little smaller. Hold that shift key down to get some straight lines. And I can take it. I'm going to put our sky up on top. I can take it right to the horizon. There, see that? Now we got some nice kind of calm rollers coming in. I kind of like that. Now one of the cool things that we can do, because we kept our layer, our base layer separate, so I'm going to come in here and I'm going to grab a warmer, much warmer, brighter color. I'm going to grab my gradient tool, and I'm going to grab this one right here. It's like a little bar that it'll gradiate out in either direction that you. I'll show you. It goes in both directions. So let's just do it right about here, and I'm going to go to the left and create, and see what it does. It creates this little bar of light. Go a little brighter. There we go. And now I'm going to go to our layer right here. I'm going to go ahead and lock it. Now, I'm going to imagine, I'm going to try something. I'm going to try brightening up just that section. So I'm going to keep that right about there. I'm going to go to color dodge, and I'm going to grab our airbrush right there. I'm going to knock that down to about 10%. I'm going to go to color dodge. There we go. That's what I want. And I've got that layer locked, and I'm just going to start to hit just, see what I'm doing is I'm hitting just the light that I laid in there. Just those ripples. And if you look, you can see the ripples lightening up. See them getting a little brighter? Just an experiment, just to see what it'll do. It's kind of cool. So they're really catching light. Once again, I want to try to create a kind of a reflected sun on the water. There, look at that. That feels kind of cool. This is going very quickly, see? Let's go up into the sky, and let's go ahead and create. Once again, we can go to our gradient tool, and this one will do a circular gradient. And let's keep that at color dodge, and I'm going to put it right here, right above our water. I'm just going to hit it a few times. There. So we're creating maybe some sun there. That feels good. Now, I'm going to grab, create a layer on top of all of our water, keeping all these layers separate. I'm going to go completely white, and I'm going to grab, remember those little sparkly brushes? I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. A little smaller. There we go. I'm just going to, oh, we got to knock that opacity all the way up and make it normal. There we go. Turn that off. I'm going to make that brush even smaller. And then we're just slightly picking up sparkles on the water. There we go. Maybe there's a couple in here. But now it's starting to feel, let's go even smaller. Get some of these sparkles back here are really tiny. See that? And I've got different shape sparkles too, so that feels pretty neat. There we go. Let's bring some of these out like I did before. Maybe some of these edges are catching, you know, the plane of the wave is just slightly different, so it's able to catch some of that sun. And look at these. I've got some that are even more sparkly shaped. If I blow this up, there, see those? Oh, you can use those too. See that? Like you get a nice sparkle. So it's always nice to kind of mix them up. You get a nice variation of shapes. I always recommend doing that. There, look at that. Man, that feels pretty cool. And let's create a layer on top. And I'm just going to create some nice warm atmosphere. There we go. Cool. Look at that. So we just created a nice sparkly water scene. So anyway, so those are the brushes. There's a whole bunch more in there. I've even got, let's see, I've got some brushes that if you want to create splashes, there's your splatter. See how cool that is? You know, there's tons and tons. You know, there's sparkly water here. There's tons and tons of stuff to play with. So, you know, get out and have some fun with these. And I'll guarantee you, you know, like I said, if you start mixing the brushes together, you're going to start discovering, you know, different textures and properties of water that you can create. So anyway, I hope you enjoy them. I had a lot of fun making them. Get out there and give them a shot. Paint some water, and I'll talk to you next time. Thanks. Bye.